Good day, ma'am. I am Christopher Advencula, and today I will discuss the introduction of this course, which is the legal aspects in tourism and hospitality industry. So in this module or in this course, we will be able to tackle the different law in the Philippines as well as the different law related to tourism and hospitality industry. We will be studying law relevant to the Philippine tourism industry so that we will know our rights and responsibility as a tourism practitioners in the future. In this module, the learning objectives are identify the different kinds of law relevant to the tourism, travel and tours and hospitality. I will explain also the concept of tourism law and enumerate the important sources of tourism law and examples of application of tourism law. So if we talk about law, so what comes in your mind? Maybe some of us, if we heard this word, the only thing that pop up into our mind is our rights and rules. According to a dictionary, law is the system of rules which is particular country or community recognized as regulating the actions of its members and which it may enforce by the imposition of penalties. So why is it law is very important? So the thing is why law is very important to avoid injustice action so that we have equal rights and give justice to those who are victims of crimes and other illegal actions in the country. So there are two sense of law, which is the general and the abstract sense, and the specific and concrete sense. For the general and abstract sense, so it is the science of moral law, founded on the rational nature of a man govern his free activity for the realization of the individual. In the sense we are referring to, so in this sense we are referring to free will of a man. For the specific and concrete sense, so it is defined as a rule of conduct, just and obligatory, promulgated by legitimate authority and of common observance and benefits. So in this sense, it's all about imposing the rights and duties of a man. So they have rules that is obligatory and mandatory to do of a man for his or her own benefits. So next is the kinds of law. So there are two kinds of law in the Philippines, so which is the as to purpose and as to scope. So for as to purpose, so this law has defined as the body of rules of conduct or action that has been prescribed by the controlling authority and has a legal binding force. For the as to scope, law scope can be divided into two domains, which is the public and the private law. So as to purpose can be divided into two, which is the substantive and adjective law. For the substantive law, a law which creates, defines, and regulates rights, or which regulates the rights and duties which give rise to cause of action. For the adjective law, so this law provides the method of aiding and protecting certain rights. So let's proceed to as to scope. So as I mentioned, as to scope is divided into two laws, the public and the private. So for the general or the public law applies to all the people in the state or the country, a law which applies to all the people of the state or to all particular class of person in the state which equal force and obligations. So the following are the examples of the public law. First is the criminal law. So criminal law is dealing with crimes and their punishment, as well as the procedures for the purpose. It focuses on the crime scenes and intended for the victims and the suspects. For the international law, so body of rules or principles of action governing the relations between states. It's all about the problems of the states that relates and subjective to a law. Next is the political law, which is regulating the relations sustained by the inhabitants of the territory to the sovereign. This is intended for the politics. So as we observe, all the examples mentioned is for the publics and If we talk about public, so all of the people will benefited for this law. Next is the special or the private law. So if we talk about private, so it focuses on a specific area, a law which relates to particular persons or things of a class. So the examples of the private law are the civil law, so which is the mass of precept which determine and regulate those relations of assistance, authority, and obedience existing among members. The maritime law, dealing with commerce by sea, involving regulations of ships and harbors and the status of the seaman. For the mercantile law, so this law is for commercial transactions, includes commercial paper, insurance, and other types of agency. So now let's move on to tourism law. So these are focuses about the different law and tourism industry that includes general government regulations and specific rules of the travel and hospitality industry. So before anything else, let's define first what is tourism. So tourism is a custom or practice of traveling for pleasure, as well as the promotion by establishment of countries to attract tourists. So tourism involves different activities for the pleasure of the guests or the travelers. Also, it involves access, accommodation, and attraction. So everything in the country law must be applied. That's why in tourism there is a law implies in this aspect for the benefits of the industry, employees, as well as for the travelers. So tourism law is the body of rules or principles of action which deals with the regulation, authority, relations, and obedience among members of society. So the examples of tourism law in the Philippines are the Republic Act 1478, which is an act to create a board of traveler and tourist industry, defining its power, duties, and responsibility, and for other purposes. One of the example also for the tourism law is the Republic Act number 710, an act granting a charter to the Philippine Tourist and Travel Association Incorporation for the development and promotion of the Philippine tourist industry. And also the examples of the Republic Act for the tourism is the 11360 Act, an act providing that service charges collected by the hotels, restaurants, and other similar establishments be distributed in full to all covered employees. So those are some law and tourism industry. And now let's move on to sources of law relevant to the tourism, travel, and hospitality industry. So there are 6 sources of law that relevant to tourism and hospitality industry, and the first one is the Philippine Constitution. So this is the fundamental law of the land to which all other laws must conform. So Philippines Constitution is like a mother of law in the Philippine Republic. Second is the statute or legislative enactments, prescribe forms of solemnities, prescribing rules of action or civil conduct with respect to persons, things, or both. The third one is the administrative or executive orders, so issued by the administrative officials under legislative authority. And the next one is the judicial decisions or jurisprudence. It refers to the decisions of the Supreme Court in interpreting the law or the Constitution. Next is the custom, rule of conduct which in a given place and among given group of people. And the last one is the other sources, which refers to the decision of foreign tribunals and opinions of textbook writers. So tourism law is very important for the sake of the establishment and the people around the industry. According to the World Tourism Organization or UNWTO, the objective of the tourism law is to provide a legal and regulatory framework for tourism, development and management, the preservation of cultural traditions and natural resources, and to facilitate the participation of the private sector and local communities. So that's all for the introduction, and thank you and God bless.